Welcome to this special episode of Drachmas and Denarii. Today we're joined by Antoine. Unfortunately, Sam could not be with us today, so we'll be running a shorter version of our podcast, going through a little bit about our recent additions to our collections, and perhaps even talking a bit about what our collection goals are and where we see our collections going in the future. Welcome, Antoine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adrian. It is unfortunate that Sam couldn't join us today, but I think we have a good episode planned for our listeners today.
Definitely. All right, let's get into it. You've shared a few coins here that are that I presume are sort of maybe Indo-Greek, Indo-Parthian related. Could you talk a bit about those?
Yeah, well, just to get us started, for this episode, I think our idea was to do a bit of an introspective this week, just to showcase what we've been doing, where our collections are at the moment, and where we see them headed in the next, few months, years, whatever it might be. And so for me, yeah, my collection has definitely morphed over the years. It's been about 4 years now that I've been seriously collecting, maybe a little over that. And definitely over the last year, 18 months, I've definitely taken a turn towards more Eastern coinage, more esoteric sort of types that are fun and interesting in their own ways, but the history isn't necessarily as mainstream, which can be nice because the prices are usually a bit lower as well as a result. And yeah, so this is one of those areas. This is actually, it's not quite Indo-Scythian, it's just Indo. Interestingly enough, this is from the Punjab region of India, Pakistan. It's actually from a city that's modern day known as Pathankot in northern Punjab. And this is modeled very closely off of the Indo-Greek type of Apollodotus, with the elephant and the bull. But instead of having a Greek legend, it's entirely in, I believe it's Kharoshthi, although it might be Brahmi, so local script, like Proto-Punjabi script. And yeah, there's Indian control symbols like the trident and that lotus flower. But otherwise, it does follow the model quite closely with the elephant, the bull, this legend around it reading, great king, and I think it's Audambaras, something to that effect. So yeah, it's just an interesting little local offshoot of the Indo-Greek type, and obviously as the Indo-Greek kingdom waxed and waned, it would have had an impact on its neighbors, especially in North India, northwestern India, and so this is just one of those smaller kingdoms in the region that at some point in that mid second century BC, they had a look at the rival coinage and the system that was there, and they're like, why don't we give this a shot? And yeah, it's interesting. This is actually, I picked this up quite literally last night, around 24 hours ago, and I'm very excited for it because it's a tough type to get too. I think there's around a dozen or so examples that have sold, visible on Search, maybe a few more if you go looking around. And yeah, not a super common type, so very pleased with this.
So you said it was an offshoot of an Indo-Greek issue, and I clearly see the resemblance. What's the date on this? When was it issued?
So I don't think there is a very firm dating. The Apollodotus type is generally thought to have been made around 160-ish BC, before 150. So this would have likely been made sometime after that, but likely before around 100 BC. So in that 150 to 100 BC sort of range.
Whoa, that sounds really, really early. I mean, like, because the Indo-Greek kingdom was obviously it was quite a bit smaller at that point, but it still existed. So it's odd seeing a local type like this issued. I feel like.
Well, actually, I'm glad you do bring up that point because this is before the Indo-Greeks really took off. Like you have the, you know, real expansion of the kingdom, especially under Menander, who takes it to unprecedented heights, and that's in the late, like sort of 150 to 120-ish time frame, I believe. definitely the 130s, 140s and 30s BC. So this would have been likely made before that. Like I would say 160
Oh,
to 135, 30-ish BC is
gotcha.
probably the most likely time frame for this to have been made because I believe this kingdom would have been one of those engulfed very early on in the Indo-Greek conquests because their kingdom came to encompass this region and quite a bit further south in India.
Very interesting. I mean, I really like Indian coins in general. I mean, Indo-Greeks I'm quite partial to. So this is something that's I think is quite charming, but at the same time, it's very very unknown to me. I haven't done any research when it comes to these sort of local types. So super interesting. I can see that there's a rose symbol in the on the reverse by the Cebu.
Yes, that's the lotus flower. I know it's an important symbol. I do not know exactly what it means either. I need to do my own reading into this type.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So now here we continue along the same vein. This is an actual Indo-Greek coin now. This one is also pretty rare. And we've got another elephant, although this time instead of being worn as a headdress or just standing on his own, he's being worn as a pauldron on the king's shoulders. So I'm a big fan of this type. It's of King Lysias, and you can see that Basilios, then it should say Anikitoi, and then Lysioi, so Lysias. And then the Rosti legend on the back with Hercules, who is holding a club and a palm frond, which is something of a local Bactrian sort of innovation to the Hercules depiction. But yeah, it's the heroic sort of pose modeled off Eucratides, and it's King Lysias here wearing his nice helmet with a nice feather plume and everything. He's about to throw a spear, and he's got this wonderful little elephant head as a pauldron. Because why not? When you're king of the Indo-Greeks, you can wear an elephant as a decoration on your shoulders.
Gotta have some drip.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And this obviously, this is a little bit, this is post Menander, so at this point the kingdom would have been on something of a high locally, definitely like a middle power, regional power at the time.
I was actually looking at this coin before the sale, and I know we spoke about it before the sale actually closed, and I kind of hand waved it away. I'm currently looking for a Lysias with this bus type, but I just looked at it very briefly, and I hand waved it as like one of those very common helmeted chucking spear types, but I didn't notice the elephant. Is that an Aegis that you mentioned?
I don't bel I see, I'm not too sure because the Aegis is usually worn at the front. It's usually like a central breastplate sort of area ornament, right? Like it's supposed to be center chest at the front. This looks to me like a pauldron, like a shoulder bit of shoulder plating, shoulder armor. So, and I believe the auction description tends to agree with that
Oh,
usually, is that it's a pauldron. So he's wearing it on his shoulder. So not quite an Aegis. It would be more ornamental in this case, I
gotcha.
believe.
Well, this is like safe to say this is like one of the most desirable bust types of Lysias, if I'm not mistaken, with the elephant pauldron.
Yes, he does have one where he's wearing a la Demetrius and even Ptolemy, a la Ptolemy's version of Alexander. He's wearing an elephant scalp. That's a bit more common. It's actually significantly more common. It's still beautiful. This one is, yeah, him with the elephant as part of his armor instead. So it's a little different and significantly harder to come by. But you're right, it does mimic the Menander type. It's meant to invoke that type, which is from his predecessor Menander. But of course, that one just has a fairly, I believe it doesn't even have any armor. Usually it's just Menander mimicking Eucratides with the sort of bare torso look.
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure, sure. But still a very cool coin. And just to mention it, I am quite interested in the Greek coinages, and I am a little not sore, but maybe I'm having some regrets not bidding on this now after the sale closed.
Well, let's hope there's more to come at some point. Not too many.
Yeah.
And yeah, this caps off the Indian segment of my collection. This was a bit earlier in the year at Stax, their January feature sale. And this has been a dream of mine for a little while now, from probably a few months into collecting. I've wanted one of these ever since. This is a Kushan dinar. It's of one of the better known rulers, Vasudeva, who had one of the more prolific emissions of coinage. And this one, I personally am a big fan of it because it is minted at the Gandhara mint. So the Kushans ruled over, excuse me, much of pretty much all of Afghanistan, a good chunk of southern Central Asia, like Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, that region, um, and then northern into Pakistan and kind of stretching into India on and off. So this one is made in Gandhara, which is actually northern Pakistan. So they had two main mints. The home front was around that Kabul sort of region, Herat, Kabul, that kind of area. And then the Gandhara region is sort of on the southern side of the Hindu Kush Mountains, which, Hindu Kush named after the Hindu Shahis and the Kushan. So, yeah, this is made in the subsidiary mint. Peshawar is still a city that survives to this day. And yeah, this is just a really fun type for me because it's well centered, it's got a really nice full legend. It's a little different in that instead of being a portrait of the ruler, it's an entire like full body depiction of him in full ceremonial armor with weapons and everything. And then yeah, it's like this. It's very similar to Greek script, but it's not quite Greek script, this Bactrian script here. I believe it's Bactrian. um, which is also the origin of the term King of Kings. It's not Persian, it comes from here. I mean, there is obviously like the Persian titles, the Achaemenid titles and such, but the actual term like King of Kings, this is one of the earliest usages. So it's, if you see the legend starts right at his left foot, or his right foot, sorry. And so yeah, just on the other side, just down a bit. Yeah, next to the quiver there. And yeah, so it's Shahan Shah Basudeo Kushan. That's very fun. A very fun legend.
Yeah, because I am very intrigued by the Bactrian script here. Uh, is the language used? Is that still some sort of derivative of Greek, or is this some local? Do they just use the script and then some local language, or is this still Bactrian as in the derivative of the Greek language?
No, I think in this case the script is like it's Greek-esque in form, but the words themselves, like Shah is a word that is Persian in origin.
Yeah.
Um, Kushan is obviously their local sort of tribal kingdom name. Yeah, I think it's more that the script is Greek based, and then the language itself is more local in origin. Maybe a bit of a fusion, but maybe some Greek influence. But yeah, for the most part, it's just interesting that it's Greek script. But no, I'd say the language is definitely more of a local flavor.
Yeah, definitely. I was a little taken aback by the fact that I couldn't read what I was like, what was right before me. Um, Usually, even Bactrian Greek is legible to some extent, but I'm having a real hard time reading what's being said here on the obverse.
Yeah, the letter forms are a bit different. The ones that are similar are the alphas are definitely similar. There's the beta for Vasudeva. It's Vasudeva here. Um, yeah, I guess there's a kappa technically for Kushan, but it's a little bit different looking. Otherwise, yeah. Um, Sigma definitely looks different. Not even really a Sigma, I guess, because it's an SH sound. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting script.
For sure. And I think the blend between Greek and Eastern culture is always like very, very intriguing. And to see that on a coin obviously is it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a big part of the allure of these. And the other thing to keep in mind is this is significantly later than those Indo-Greek and just Indo-Greek derivative ones that we saw earlier. This is from around 200 AD, so we're thinking like Age of the Antonines, like height of the Roman Empire kind of era, not Greek, Alexandrian, early Hellenistic time period anymore. So
Gotcha.
we're a good 500, 550 years removed from Alexander and his conquests and the subsequent successor states. Even Menander is a good 350 odd years in the past at this point. So there is definitely that distance temporally, if not geographically, that has led to some changes.
And with time, Greek culture and Greek influence probably wanes here a bit. Would you say that that's reflective of this coin? That
Oh,
like, yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah. You have the deity on the reverse now. You're not getting Heracles or Athena. It says Oesho, um, and I'm not too sure, but I think it's kind of similar to Shiva. It's definitely pushing towards the Hindu mythology side of things, although the Kushan did maintain some Greek mythology as well, obviously. They had a variety of reverse types across many of their kings. Um, but some of the more popular ones are definitely leaning more towards the Hindu side by this point in time. And yeah, the style is no longer very Greek. The legend is different, and that's reflective of the changes over 500 years. You go from the Greeks settling in and becoming the dominant class to a bit of a fusion locally. Then you have the Persians re-encroaching, and at the same time you have Central Asians like the Kushans coming down through the mountains and settling in the North Indian plains and in Afghanistan. And so yeah, you get that evolution with time of culture and language and art and everything.
for sure. And I mean, just from a coin perspective, having the full borders here on the reverse is, to me at least, really, really appealing. It makes the coin pop a little bit more. Um, and obviously, the obverse centering is really, really well too.
Yeah, I think this might actually be my best centered coin. I don't think I own any other coin with a full reverse pellet all the way around.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
And like full legend too on the obverse. So yeah, it was worth the wait. I think
But
that's the other thing. Be patient. If you really want something, it's worth waiting for something you'll be happier with. A nicer example.
I agree. And these are quite common, as I understand it. They're not that rare, so you can
Oh,
probably afford
loads
to
of
wait.
them.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can afford to wait. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Moving on a bit, we're going from the eastern limits of Greek influence here to the Mediterranean. I've actually had some developments. I mainly specialize in Roman Republican coins, and recently that has manifested with me getting lots of imperatorials, lots of issues from the first century BC that highlights. I like to collect different important magistrates from the late Republic. So you have like people whose careers you can follow. Such as Lentulus, a consul in the 50s BC. He issued coins in different parts of his career, so there's like a chronology to follow. But that's what I enjoy mainly. But recently, I've pivoted towards another section, I guess, of Republicans. I've really been excited to collect what most people would probably categorize as one of the more bland sides of Republican collecting, Legionary Denarii. um, it's something that I think is quite soothing from just a collector's perspective. Um, Having a complete set of legionaries, there are about, I think, 30 different types to get. And I don't know, it's very, very satisfying getting a good legionary for a good price, and you just like add to the set, really. So I thought I'd go over briefly the new legionary additions that I've made to the collection. Starting off, this is a denarii honoring the 17th Legion, named here Classicae, meaning naval, the 17th Naval Legion. Obviously hinting that they had some sort of fleet duty or similar. This is not a rare coin by any means, but all the named units of Mark Antony are very desirable. And I was lucky to pick this up. I think, Antoine, a week ago now.
Yeah, just about a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago at a San Marino farm, and I did have some reservations because it does look a little odd stylistically, but having done quite a bit of research now after the sales closed, I'm quite happy with picking this up for a good price. But yeah, this is one of the harder coins to get, especially when you're buying with a tight budget.
Yes, I think you did quite well with this one. Even if it did take a little prodding to get you to bid. No, I think it's a really lovely coin. It's a fantastic eagle, nice legible legend, and an interesting legion that's actually named, which is wonderful that it's actually named. It makes it so much more interesting that way.
I agree. Moving on here. This is a coin that I the pattern here being established, I think, with Legionary Denarii. There's not really you could talk about the Legion's history and so forth. And I would like to do an episode about that eventually. I think when it comes to collecting Legionary Denarii, it's less of an historical pursuit as it would be with other coins, and more so about satisfying some primal collecting need, at least in my book. So this is a denarius honoring the second Legion of Mark Antony, and what really drew me to this coin is that it's actually overstruck on a previous Legionary Denarius. So you can see here on the obverse the hints of an undertype showing the signum of the reverse, and on the actual reverse here you can see the aug, as in augur, in the legend, and the prow of the undertype. So I thought this was a really interesting coin. It also it's pretty high grade, I'd say, with very lustrous surfaces. So I think between it being overstruck, being kind of interesting that way, and also being a pretty high grade Legionary Denarius, I'm quite satisfied with having picked this up.
Yeah, I can see why. I think we discussed this one in the past, and it really does help that the overstriking is on opposite sides. You have the obverse and reverse flipped around, so you get the eagle, and then there's the ship's prow just poking out. It gives a very fun aesthetic.
Yeah, For sure. And I wonder, it's a bit unfortunate that the legionary number here isn't preserved. It's just beneath the prow here on the obverse, I'd say. It would be interesting to know if the undertype is also the second legion, or if this was a different legion altogether that for some reason someone chose to overstrike on.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Unfortunately, we're unlikely to make any contributions to numismatic academics with this coin for now. But it is definitely, I think, going to be one of the centerpieces of your Mark Antony set. I just love it.
And going further here, this is another named legion, and they are quite desirable. This is one of the more common named units that I can find, at least. So apart from my very subpar photo editing skills here, it shows the 12th Legion, the Antiquae, meaning the 12th Legion, the Venerable or the Old 12th Legion. I think having a coin with the name Antiquae is kind of ironic in a sense. An ancient coin naming something old, something venerable with the word Antiquae. It's kind of a pretty interesting, I guess, thing to have. But anyway, this is another one of the stepping stones for me. I really like the named legions, and I thought this was just good enough that I'd want it. I got it for a pretty good price, and when it comes to my legionary denarii, I put a heavy emphasis on the price, since I don't want my pursuit of this set to take precedence over acquiring other coins that I find more interesting historically.
I have to ask, do you know why they chose specific legions to be named and most of them aren't and only a few are? Is there any rhyme or rhythm to it?
No, we don't know. The issue here is that during this time, such a large amount of legions were raised for the impending clash with Octavian that we have very, very little data on what legion goes where and why this one was named something like that. There's not much. You can infer that, say, Antiquae means that the members that were initially part of this legion, maybe they were veterans, or maybe they had some previous service as soldiers. They weren't just a recruit force. But that's just speculation. There are other legions that name different locations, such as the Lybicae, the Libyan legion. And obviously you can infer then that legion was at some point stationed in Libya. But other than that, there's not much rhyme or reason to the named legions, and most of them were disbanded after the Civil War.
I see. A nice little snapshot of history then. Roman
Definitely.
military history.
Yep. And if you're beginning to become bored here, it's completely understandable. The legionary denarii, I don't think that they're they can be quite monotonous. They're so similar between types. The only thing different about them is the legionary number, of course. But I think that there's still some interesting things that you can draw from some of these coins. This is a coin honoring the 13th Legion. So anyone who's watched the HBO's Rome, so, exactly 13, would probably like to have one of these coins. And obviously tracing the history of the 13th, crossing the Rubicon with Caesar in 49. This is a coin that I really like, and there's, even though it's very monotonous, as I said, there's a lot of history packed into this coin, I feel like, which makes it all the more fun.
Now, I do have to ask here, for the benefit of our viewers and myself, is this the same 13th Legion? Because were they not reconstituted to some effect by this point in time? So is this still Caesar's 13th, or is this a new legion under Antony that is named 13?
So here, it's an interesting point that you bring up. I don't think there's a way to tell definitively that this is the legion that crossed the Rubicon with Caesar. No. Legionary numbers were reconstituted, they were raised, they were disbanded, and especially during the turbulent times between 49 and 31 BC, lots of forces were raised, and then they were disbanded, lost to history, or whatever. So I think this is probably not the same unit, but it highlights the 13th Legion, and it's one of the only contemporary depictions of them on a coin. So I think probably to those with very idealistic tendencies to collect the coin of the legion that crossed the Rubicon, probably not. But I still think there's a connection to be made between the two.
That makes sense. Well stated.
I'm starting to regret having all of these coins together now. I'm sure most of our viewers have probably fallen asleep already. This is the last legionary denarius that I'll show today, thankfully. This is honoring the 22nd Legion. So you might see this and think, the 22nd? Did Antony have 22 legions under his command? And the answer is actually, yeah, he did. There are, so previously there were records for a total of 23 legions that were honored in this series with legionary denarii. And any number above that was considered a forgery. However, lately, coins have popped up in trade that honor the 30th Legion, the 33rd, I think even the 37th. And those have now recently become more accepted by numismatists as authentic coins. However, it's important to take into account that Antony probably never had a force of close to 40 legions at full strength, but instead these units were very fragmentary, very much not to the 5,000 man force that a usual legion of this time would have been.
I wonder if there might have been an aspect of almost political propaganda or intimidation involved with that. Look at me, I have 37 legions, even though they're all half strength.
I'm sure there wasn't, and I mean, knowing Antony, I mean, it's not far. It's not far from reality. I think like that would probably be his first intuition, to just like say he has 50 legions and try to get some concession from that or something. But it is quite interesting how most of these were dismissed previously. As I said, everything above the 23rd Legion was dismissed as a forgery or something that was tooled. But just recently, I think in the beginning of the 2000s, a passage of one of Cicero's letter that mentions the 35th Legion was I guess rediscovered or reinterpreted by numismatists, and that in turn gave credence to the fact that okay, some of these coins might be genuine, and they might have been issued above the legionary number of 23.
Yeah, an interesting example of how numismatics and more mainstream archaeology intersect and can help one another, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. So finally here, we're back to some fun coins, some coins that actually have some good history. So take it away, Antoine.
All right. Well, this is another aspect of the collection that has been growing. It's sort of it's an adjacent rabbit hole to the Indo-Greek Kushan sort of that region. This is Islamic, so Islamic coins are fairly overlooked, and it's understandable. Most people in Western markets can't read Arabic. It's just weird, sometimes beautiful squiggles on this otherwise fairly bland looking coin. No images, no people. You can't even read the script because it's not Latin or even Greek based. So why bother? Which is a real boon for someone like me who can read the script and finds them interesting and likes to delve into the historical connections there. So this one, excuse me, it looks like just about any other sort of Ayyubid or sort of that region era dirham. Its style of the Kufic isn't too far off. The general outlay of the coin pretty similar. There are coins of Salahuddin that are, more or less identical if you couldn't actually read the Arabic. Um, and at first glance, because you have to keep in mind this thing is tiny in hand, it's like 2 centimeters across, just over. So you wouldn't really notice much of a difference. You're just handling one day to day. But this is actually part of a series of coins minted in the uh, stronghold of Acre during the Crusader era by the Christian Crusaders. Um, they started out, and it's unfortunate we don't actually have examples to show you here, but they started out with an example that was similar to this, but it had a big cross right in the middle of the obverse that made it really obvious who'd made it, and trying to introduce it into circulation at that time in that political, social climate, it was kind of a flop. People didn't really want to trade in them because there's enough money going around that an ailing crusader states throughput isn't really going to make much of a difference, and I'd like to vote with my money, so no thanks. So then they tried another design where there's a smaller cross in the middle of the obverse. Still, eventually they changed it up. With this one, all you really get that is a Christianized element is the fleur-de-lis, where you can see a few of them peppered across the obverse and the reverse. But other than that, it's really the Arabic itself that gives away who made this and what it is. Uh, so yeah, this is a Crusader coin minted in Accra in around the 1250s, which is when these were made. And it is fully in Arabic. Initially, they made the very, very first thing they did, I think, was to make just straight imitations of the dirhams of Al-Kamil, who was the Ayyubid ruler at the time. But then the Pope was like, "Oh my God, how are you? Why would you do this? You're literally like rewriting the Muslim Declaration of Faith on a Christian coin. Like, what are you doing, guys?" So I believe there was a bit of backlash there from the papacy, which is what prompted the change in the first place, and then the eventual trying to make them less obviously Christian until you get to this. And you can see it says the obverse if you compare it to any other Islamic coin. It's the very first, or sorry, the reverse. The very first word there is Allah, which is the Arabic term for God, for like the Abrahamic God, and it's the exact same um, term used to refer to the Christian God as well by Christian Arabs to this day. So it starts off and it says, excuse me, um, Allahu wahdahu al-ibnu wahid al I get this a little bit mixed up here, but it's basically saying there's one God, he has us one son, and there's one baptism. And then the obverse says, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, one Godhead. So it's like like it's a riff off the Muslim Declaration of Faith, but a Christianized version of it. And it's all in Arabic, and it uses, yeah, like an Arab Islamic sort of format, but it restructures that around Christian belief. So I find that very interesting. It is about a century and a half into the Crusader era at this point, and yeah, it just shows that fusion of these foreigners, initially foreigners, now locals for the most part, into the local, I guess, culture would probably be the best way to put it. They've adopted the language, they've adopted the some of the linguistic traditions here. The currency is mirroring it very closely. So yeah, it's a bit of that a final attempt at integration, maybe.
And, I mean, it's a super interesting coin, and I find it quite shocking that, like, because before you told me about this coin, I had no idea something like this existed. Uh, from what I understand, during these times, there was enormous friction between Christian and Islamic religious cultural influence and obviously religious influence. For the Crusades to make something like this, and for the locals to accept it. It's an odd one for sure.
Yeah, well, I think it's a fairly short-lived issue. It only existed for about a decade, but it was still obviously put into circulation and they exist. They're hard to come by, but they exist. Um, yeah, in terms of the friction, I think, and really especially at this point, we're into the 1250s, approaching 1260 now. There's a lot of reconquest that's happened subsequent to the Second and the Third and the Fourth Crusades. Um, but yeah, at this point, I think the tension is still there, but a lot of the initial um, hurt that was inflicted by the First Crusade had sort of been rolled back. By this point, there was definitely some reconciliation happening, especially when you have, I'm trying to remember which crusade, it's the fifth, sixth maybe, when Frederick II comes and he negotiates a new treaty and everything, and around the 1230s, is it? Something like that. So yeah, it's a different era from the height of the Crusades where you think about like the people in Jerusalem being slaughtered to the point where there's blood up to your ankles in all of the streets of the city, Muslim, Christian, Jewish alike, or the reconquest especially of Jerusalem under Saladin. Um, yeah, it's definitely a different era at this point. So I think a lot of that tension is probably gone at this point in comparison. It doesn't mean there isn't probably some residual resentment, but it's not as acute as it was in the earlier, like 1090s through to early 1200s sort of period. But yeah,
Gotcha.
it is a very unique snapshot in history.
For sure. And I think the Trinity is that on the obverse? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Well, it's riffing off like the most Islamic coins. It sort of depends, but the formula set forward by the Umayyads was the obverse would be La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, which is there's no God but God, and He is one, and He has no partners, He has no equals. And then the reverse would generally be a verse from which is the Muslim Declaration of Faith, and then the reverse would be a chapter from the Quran of a series of verses. which basically says Hu Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid, wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad, which is he's one God. It basically says he's one God. There's none like him. He is, incomparable. And in this case, the Christian version of it, changing it up. So the obverse says, Al-Abu wal Al-Abu wal Ibn wal Ruhul Quds ilahum wahid. So it's changed out that, he is one God and this and that, to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. One God, or one Godhead, I guess, the Godhead of the Trinity. And then yeah, the reverse is like he is one God, but he has a son, and there's one baptism, basically. So yeah,
Wow.
it's sort of like trying to rework that into a Christian viewpoint.
That is, I mean, yeah, just shockingly. I mean, I'm not at all into medieval stuff. I'm just so far removed from it, but I find this quite intriguing. Just from the way you've been able to describe it. So, thank you. It's really cool.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yes, now here we have something of an anomaly in Islamic coinage. So this one is an Islamic coin. It's not pretending to be one or trying to mimic one or anything like that. Um, but obviously most Islamic coins, as we discussed, they're boring to people because they're anepigraphic. They just have writing, and it's writing that most people in Western countries can't read. But in this case, it's got a picture. It's got a couple pictures, and they're actually quite nice, in my opinion. Um, so this is from Khwarizm, which is Central Asia. It's trying to think. I'd say parts of Kazakhstan, parts of Turkmenistan, maybe Kyrgyzstan, not too sure. Um, but yeah, I think your cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, that sort of region. So Central Asia, the real heartland. And there were pre-Islamic coins made on this sort of model in that region, which themselves would have been based on the Sasanian model. So portrait on the obverse, and then the reverse. Depending, you have some very early types with sort of a fire altar scene. You also get these horse archers, warrior types as well. But with this one, the style is modified a little bit. You still have the very nice, mustachioed ruler with his ornamental and extremely extravagant headdress, and not quite a curious, but his garment there. But then you switch out the local script for Arabic in this case. So it says it's naming the ruler. It says Abdullah bin Tahir, which is the name of this ruler, Abdullah, son of Tahir. Um, and then on the reverse, you have this warrior archer carrying out a sword with a quiver on his very um, nicely prepped warhorse. He's got a nice, fun, ornamental saddle and quiver and everything ready to go. And it actually names the person on the reverse as well. So it's this ruler's son, Muhammad, Muhammad bin Tahir, or sorry, Muhammad bin Abdullah. And this guy actually went on to be the governor of Baghdad during the Abbasid civil war in the 850s. So it sort of gives us that direct connection to the center of the Islamic world, but at this time his father was the governor of this area of Central Asia. And so yeah, we have this fun snapshot of a local tributary sort of um, semi-autonomous region with its own coinage instead of the standard. I mean, obviously they would have also had standard Abbasid dirhams in circulation, but you also get this. And it's nice. It's a nice little snapshot into something different. A bit of the local culture still preserved.
I mean, I completely agree, and I just curious. I know that after the Arabic conquests, they did keep some of the Sassanid coin designs, so they still had the great king's portrait on some of the dirhams. Is this a similar case here, that this is an imitational sort of thing, or can we presume that this is a portrait of the actual governor? of this province?
No, this is quite deliberate, I'd say. It's very different because those were very early on in the first 50, 60 years of the Islamic Caliphate. It was after the initial conquest, the logistic capabilities weren't really there yet. I mean, they knocked two of the biggest global empires of the last 700 years almost clear off the map in the space of a few decades, 2, 3 decades, right? So as a result of that, it took time to build up logistical capabilities to get a standardized sort of design out there. And for whatever reason, it took them quite a while, especially in the East, in Persia, to sort of get a handle on the situation. So that's different. Once that design was phased out, the Khusro types were phased out, and you have the introduction, numismatically referred to as post-reform coinage, after I believe it's 77 Hijri. So at that point, you get your very standardized and epigraphic types pretty much across the board, more or less. There's still some holdouts in the East. Um, and you get that into the Abbasid era, and they start switching out the face for letters like a Hay for Harun and that sort of thing. But no, this is different. This one's different because this is well into the Abbasid era. We're talking the 830s. So it's a good like 170 odd years later. And they would have had like the full run of Umayyad dirhams before this, as well as like 50 odd years of Abbasid coinage. So this is more of a deliberate, I don't know if it's actually his portrait specifically, but it's definitely meant to be him. It's naming him, so it's meant to be him
Oh,
depicted in the style of the local rulers, the
that,
traditional depiction of local rulers, and it's meant to be, yes, him, Abdullah bin Tahir, in that style. So yeah, it's very different in that sense because it is, like, without a doubt, basically naming and depicting him at a point much later on than those early ones. This is after you have a very standardized and widespread Islamic Caliphate coinage already in this region and across the rest of their empire. But yeah, for whatever reason, this was made locally in Central Asia in this fashion.
was there any cultural importance lended to putting your own portrait on coin? Was that a thing? This being discouraged to put a human portrait on a coin in Islamic culture at this time?
I think in Islamic culture, certainly at this time, it would have been strongly frowned upon. Depiction of human beings, especially the faces, are sort of a it depends on the person. Obviously, when it comes to prophets and their companions and sort of figures of religious importance, it's definitely a no-go, or especially would have been at this time. In general, more generally, it is frowned upon and it wasn't common practice for a very, very long time. Basically up until the early modern era, even the late modern era, I'd say,
Oh
more like
wow.
the 18th and 19th centuries. But yeah, in this case, I don't really know what happened. I think there must have just been a very strong local cultural identity that identified with this and created the right atmosphere for something like this to be made because it does run counter to all of those sort of tenets that would have been in place, especially regarding an official sanctioned document like this.
Sure. Yeah. Very interesting.
Now here we can see something that, would have provided an early sort of inspiration for a coin like that. This is a coin of the first Sasanian King of Kings slash Emperor slash whatever you want to call him, Ardashir, who basically was a king of a small kingdom of Persis, alongside his brother Shapur, who is also the name of his son, who would go on to defeat, I believe it's the Emperor Valentine. No, sorry, who does he beat? Is it
Valerian.
Valentinian?
Valerian.
Valerian, that's the name, yes. Yeah, and allegedly turns him into a footstool and whatnot. But yeah, this is his father, the founder of the Sasanian dynasty proper. And yeah, he reunified the fragments of the Persian, the kingdoms and the client states and everything into a stronger, more powerful, more enduring empire that would last until the Islamic conquests, some almost 450, 400 plus years.
I do really, really like this bust. I think sometimes Sassanids and Parthian too, obviously, they get quite monotonous because they're sometimes a little crude, sometimes a little. They don't. There's not a lot of variance between rulers when it comes to bust styles and so forth. But I do think this is one of the at least the finer styles that I've seen. Just a really, really good portrait.
Yeah, I'd say that is definitely a problem that Sasanian coinage suffer from. Even, yeah, you're right. Honestly, Persian coinage in general, and it sort of follows this pattern across the dynasties. Achaemenid coinage, at the start, it's new, it's interesting. There's a few different types in short succession. Your type 1 Siglos, then you get the type 2, and the type 3 is markedly different from that again. And then it sort of stays the same more or less for 200 years. Then you get with the Parthians, you get like right up until Mithridates, even technically Orodes, and to that era, you get some variation between each ruler or each group of two or three rulers, and then it becomes the same thing for 200, 250 years. With Sasanian coinage, you have the same thing happen where the first century Ardashir, Shapur the first, Shapur the second, Hormuzd, both Vahrams. There's some very good quality portraiture, and it's individualistic. There's obviously like some stylistic aspects that are like a mint interpretation, where each mint sort of creates things in a similar sort of way for each ruler. Um, but generally, you get portraits that are individually tailored to each ruler throughout that first century, from the early 200s down to like three early 300s, 320s, and then following Shapur II, who ruled for a whopping like 70, 71 odd years. I think part of it may have been the stability of his rule, the widespread nature of his rule, and the fact that you no longer really needed to broadcast who you are when you've been on the throne from the age of 8 or 9 up till you're 80. Um, so yeah, after that you get this turn where it becomes very standardized, monotonous. You get some variation in the next 100 odd years, and then after that, it's basically the exact same portrait just being carved by someone in a slightly different style. Just because, not because that's what the ruler looked like per se, but just because that's how the portrait turned out that day. So yeah,
Fantastic. No, but I mean, there's like hard. It's hard to choose a favorite among the coins that you've shown so far, but I think this one is probably it's up there, definitely.
thank you. Here we go. So this is the last sort of leg of my collecting journey this past year or so. I haven't been buying much Greek. The prices have been, in my opinion, unjustifiably high, and there also has been something of a dearth of good quality coinage. Just in general at auction, there's, middling coins that are going for the same price as very, very nice pieces were going not that long ago. Um, so yeah, I've been pushed into Eastern coins and more Roman Republican. So this isn't Roman Republic exactly, but it's close enough. It's the Kingdom of Mauritania under Juba II during the Principate era of Augustus, and this coin would have been made towards the tail end of that time frame in around probably the late teens into 20-ish AD, when Juba would have been getting to be an old man, and his son Ptolemy, who is the second portrait. The obverse, the picture on the left, is Juba, the old wise king who was a good friend of Augustus's, and then on the right, the reverse is his son Ptolemy. This is the very last Ptolemy ever, to be a king of anything. So it's Ptolemy, the son of Juba and Cleopatra Selene, who was herself a daughter of Mark Antony and the Cleopatra, Cleopatra the Seventh. Um, and yeah, this is the last king who would, from the Ptolemaic line that started with Ptolemy the First Soter back in, 305, 304, 305 when he takes the diadem, and it would finish here in Mauritania a good 350 years later when Caligula brutally and for no good reason murders Ptolemy, who is also his cousin. But that's a different story. Anyways, this is that Ptolemy. And it's, yeah, there's not too many portraits of him. This is a nice one. It's very Roman in style. And on the reverse, it says, Regis Jube, actually, sorry. I'm not too sure what it says. I thought it said Regis Jube.
Regis
Rex.
Juba
Oh,
Filius.
Rex Ptolemy Filius Regis
Yep.
Jube. That's what it is. Yep. And then obviously Rex Juba on the obverse for the king. So yeah, this is an interesting piece. It's a little bit broken up, but I don't mind that too much. And yeah, I just love the fact that it has a portrait of the king and his son, who was also the very last Ptolemaic king ever.
I think that's I didn't know about that actually. But that's super intriguing. And I think I haven't really seen this type in trade. You mentioned it was rare. Is it just like is it very rare this type with the dual portrait?
Somewhat, yeah. I'd say it's maybe a once every year or other year
Ah,
sort of
okay.
coin. Yeah, Mauritanian coinage, in general, outside of the big types, there's like 4 or 5 common widespread types, and then everything else is like it shows up once a year, maybe once every five kind of thing.
Sure. And I do really enjoy the. There's something about having such a Roman looking coin naming a king. Um, it's a little ironic, perhaps. It's a little I don't know. It looks good, I think.
Well, that's it. It's the enlightened despotism of Augustus hard at work here. This man is a close friend of his. He's given him just enough autonomy to keep him happy, to keep him functioning well within the Roman fold. He's got this wealthy country that pumps out, like, I think it's I can't remember exactly who, Suetonius maybe, Tacitus, somebody talks about the coinage of Mauritania and how good quality it was and widespread and everything. So yeah, it's like this counter currency to the Roman denarius, made on the same standard, same style. Even Juba's portraits are very much modeled off of Augustus. He would have been pushing 60 something, 70 almost at this
Sure.
point.
Yeah.
And he's got the same sort of Augustan, very young look. This is after Augustus would have most likely already been dead. Yeah, so Juba's definitely around his 70. Um, yeah, and he's modeled it off the same style there. Sorry. And yeah, it bookends a chapter of history for me. This is like the real end of the Hellenistic era, in my opinion. Because
Sure.
after
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah.
brought into the Roman fold as a province, Caligula, the Mad Emperor, takes over and all of that. Like, this is the very last time you'd have a Hellenistic sort of monarchy in any sense of the word. And it is run by a direct descendant of one of the prime Hellenistic founders of that age, yeah.
And it is quite a romantic end to it if you want to look at it that way with the final Ptolemaic king. I mean that's I think that's yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, what a journey for them, right? From Macedonia, India to Egypt,
Goat farmers in Macedonia to this.
like, yeah, from Ptolemy, son of Logos, to Ptolemy, son of Cleopatra. Impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know if I need to introduce what this is. No, I'm kidding. But like, this is maybe going to be my favorite coin of the year. It's high up there at the moment. This is a portrait of Mark Antony, in case anyone was wondering. He is depicted rather unusually. He's got a beard and he's wearing a shroud. Um, so yeah, I don't know if he took up the title of Pontifex Maximus at this point, but the flagellum and the shroud are both sort of symbols of priesthood in Roman religion, and the beard is mourning because this coin is made sometime after March the 15th, 44 BC, most likely in April in the lead up to I can't quite remember the name of the games, but there were these games held towards, I think it was around the 20th, 22nd of April each year. And so this coin would have been made in the lead up to that, which is what is being showcased on the reverse. It's a equestrian acrobatics, basically. You have these performers that jump between horses and have their horses jump around obstacles and all this fun stuff in this wonderful festival. Um, and that was usually held, I think, around the 21st, 2nd of April. And this coin would have been made just following the assassination of Caesar, so in that roughly 1 month time frame. Yeah, it's wonderful. It highlights the shifting power dynamic of the Republic following Caesar's death, and obviously Antony is the guy everyone would have turned to first. Antony is the guy who's got all the cards. He has legitimacy, he has the army, he probably isn't hated enough yet to not be able to make friends in the Senate, but obviously we see how that goes soon afterwards. Um, but yeah, Antony, a portrait of him in mourning made by the Rome Mint right after the death of Caesar. Don't really know what more you could ask for.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's a remarkable coin, and I was with you when you won this, and I could not help but feel anger and joy at the same time. I mean, it's such a good coin, and I'm so jealous at you getting it. It did make me think. I don't think Antony ever took up the position of Pontifex Maximus. I think that was assigned to Lepidus quite early on. And while I'm thinking about it, I don't think he ever joined the College of Pontiffs either. But I could be mistaken. But I'm not certain though. I don't think so.
It's strange to see. There's the flagellum, it's the litus as well, and then the shroud. But yeah, that's the understanding I had, is he was never a priest. So I don't know.
Yeah. Could it be that
anything but priestly for most of his life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the way Anthony did things. But I think the symbols could perhaps be in relation to his religious duties as consul.
I almost wonder if it's a homage to Caesar as well.
Yeah,
because he
sure.
was Pontifex Maximus, and he did depict himself with the shroud and the flagellum and the litus on his coins. Yeah.
But I mean, regardless, it's such a stunning coin, and wow, it's one that I would want and I would covet to have one of these in my collection one day.
One day it's gonna happen.
Yeah, one day.
Shoot to it.
In like 20 years or 30 years maybe. But yeah, that wraps it up for us today here at Drachmas and Denarii. It's been a blast looking at lots of varying coins here. We've gone through Islamic, some Eastern Indo-Greek peripheral stuff, and we've ended it on a high note here at the death of Caesar. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll hope to see you again soon in the next episode of Drachmas and Denarii.